Margaret Thatcher continues to get an awful lot of attention in the press, especially, of course, in the British press.
That's right. A lot of the British papers are focusing on just how divided the country is actually over her death. And, for instance, on the front page of The Independent, it calls it a nation disunited in mourning. And you can see on the one hand people mourning the Iron Lady and paying tribute to her legacy and laying flowers there in front of her family, her house rather. Or photos like this, Iron Lady rust in peace, people actually celebrating her death, popping champagne and having street parties. And actually, the Independent takes a closer look at just who was celebrating out on the streets. For instance, there was a big street party in Brixton, and it points out that a lot of the people out there were actually too young to remember Margaret Thatcher. They were, in fact, toddlers in the 1980s. So why were they out there? Well, they interviewed one 24-year-old who says, well, I wasn't alive to witness most of her reign, but people are here because of the effects of it. We're here to celebrate the end of a tyrant.
And putting the other side of the coin, the right-leaning press, obviously rather horrified by all this.
That's right. It's on the front page of the Daily Mail today, which says the flames of hatred, and it says that 30 years of left-wing loathing for Lady T explodes in 6 celebrations of her death. Will her funeral now be targeted on Wednesday? And this is actually another thing that The Guardian is actually looking at. So the left-leaning paper, they asked the question, well, could her funeral actually be targeted as well? They say that there's a real security clampdown. Police are mounting a major security operation around her funeral over fears that there could be possible threats from Irish dissidents or from far left groups or just general social unrest.
And that funeral itself, I mean, it's under quite a lot of scrutiny as well because of the cost, isn't it?
That's right. Well, it's going to cost £8 million, and taxpayers are going to have to foot most of that bill, which is quite ironic given that Thatcher was, so attached to privatization. And this is a cartoon in The Independent, which shows an alternative. It's what she would have wanted, and you see Thatcher's body there in the back of a dump truck that on the side says "Wholly Privatized State Funerals." But moving back to the Daily Mail for a minute, a lot of papers are also trying to focusing on how people are going to pay tribute to her after her funeral. And the Daily Mail points out that MPs as well as senior figures in the Foreign Office and the Ministry of Defense are pushing to rename Port Stanley, so that's the capital of the Maldives. They want to rename it Port Margaret, and this is actually attracting considerable support from people on the island who, for instance, one man said, "We owe her everything. She saved the island in 1982. The Daily Mail does rightly point out, though, that this is likely not to draw, it's a trigger fury in Argentina, basically.
Okay, yeah, probably, I suspect. Let's move on to another story. Yesterday, Uhuru Kenyatta inaugurated the 4th president of Kenya. That's getting a lot of reactions, of course, in the Kenyan press.
That's right. The editorial of the Daily Nation, a paper in Kenya, says that this was a historic day, and it was also proof that Kenya is taking its place as a stable and a peaceful democracy. But it says, look, he talked the talk of unity, and now it's up to Kenyatta to walk the walk. And it says that as a watchdog of society, it's up to the media to call any administration to account. And so the Daily Nation says that it will be keeping a very close eye on the government. And there's actually a cartoon in the Daily Nation that addresses another issue that Kenyatta is facing, which is actually an ICC trial, a trial at the ICC later this year over allegations that he helped orchestrate violence during the previous election in 2007. It's unclear whether that will happen, and you see there one of his advisors saying, "Don't worry, we're going to cooperate with the ICC just fine." Meanwhile, Kenyatta there is sharpening some weapons.
And finally, Mother Jones, that's the website, if you remember, that leaked the secret and damaging recording of Mitt Romney talking about the 47% before the election in the US, leaked another series of recordings, this time damaging for another Republican senator.
That's right, that's Mitch McConnell, so he's the Republican senator from Kentucky. He's also the Republican leader in the US Senate. Now, this audio tape dates back to February 2nd, and you can hear, allegedly hear Mitch McConnell discussing with his aides a plan to defeat a possible Democratic rival, and that would be the actress Ashley Judd, who later pulled out of the race. This is getting a lot of attention in the U.S. media today. There's a good account in the Atlantic Wire. They talk about the ugly McConnell-Judd battle that could have been. Now, he was reportedly ready to go quite far and attack Judd on her religion, also on her history of mental illness. She reportedly was depressed, and, well, according to Mother Jones, they were actually his aides were quite thrilled about all this wealth of information they could attack her on. Now, just to note, McConnell has said all this is dirty tactics and has called on the FBI to investigate.
More dirty tactics from Florence VILLEMINOT on France 24 today. Thanks very much. Here's the headlines. Make do and mend. That is the philosophy behind a new business in London that says we give up on broken gadgets too easily. Matthew Warren is here with that on the Business Bulletin after the break here on France 24.